Hello, this is w.i.t.c.h.aholic. Welcome back to my channel. I mentioned in a few other videos that I'm trying to write a book, so I don't know how much videos I'm gonna upload and when, but even though I want to, I can't write for hours and hours each day, so I figured I might as well make a video. Now, I have mentioned before that I think Witch should be rebooted, and I wanted to make a video about how I would do that, but I couldn't really think of how to do that. But then I realized they could just make a new generation show, and that's kind of like a reboot, because again, new main characters, and it could also be used as an opportunity to fill in some plot holes. In this interview with Digital Bloodlines, Andrew Nichols talked a bit about having a show like in the future when the Guardians were older. I think that was hypothetical, and again, he was just a writer on the first season, so I don't know if he could even like influence Disney to reboot it, but who knows. If a lot of you like the concepts that I'm gonna go over in this video, we could always try contacting him, see if he has any influence, what he thinks about it. So I'm gonna just, before I go into like the season itself, a rough idea, I'm gonna go a bit over like the technical stuff, like how I see this being produced if somehow I was put in charge or I was a consultant. So I imagine this as a continuation of the comics, and this is how I would do it if somehow I was in charge. A continuation of the comics, but in animated form and in the style of the comics. Because, shows are much better because you could actually see it, and I think when it comes to magic, animation is much better at showing it. Now, I do think the original authors of the comics should be involved somehow because they were screwed over by Disney. So they should definitely be part of it. The writers of the show did a pretty good job, but I would want the writers to be the writers of DuckTales 2017, because I feel they did just such a good job of having a reboot, but like I don't know how to explain it. Like it was a reboot, but again, they just did it like is a reboot of the 1987 series, I think. So there was like new stuff, but it just like had the right flavor. So I think they would be perfect for this. Though of course, DuckTales, like, even though I really liked it, like again, like certain things like the mysteries, like all the magic objects that they were trying to find before Fell, like I feel like that was just, put in there. Like there's no explanation. So I wouldn't want them to just put things in without explanations. But for the most part, I think they'll be great at writing this. And so this will be about 20 years about after the Guardians. So they're older, right, with families. And they each have children. I imagine that each of them will have around 4 to 5 children, because that's just, as a religious person, I'm used to people having much larger families. So if I was in charge, I would have them each have, I say, at least 4 kids. Um, and each of them has a girl as the oldest, who's destined to be a guardian. Now, someone did write online how this is really unrealistic when you think of it, but again, we're talking about magic, and there's implied to be some sort of like fate or destiny choosing the guardians, so why not? That's also something I would want to have more in the show, like how the guardians are chosen, like what's this mystical force. Like I would want it to play some role, but I don't know yet. Like again, I didn't think of everything. This is more like concepts and a very rough idea. Um so for the main characters in the plot, I'm actually um taking some of my ideas from my fan fiction, which by the way you can read. It's under w.i.t.c.h.aholic, also on fanfiction.net. If you do read it, I love to hear your thoughts on it. And I don't know when I'll update it, because I am trying to write my book, or at least the first draft, as soon as possible, because, there's a lot to do before it gets published. So the sooner it's done, the sooner I can get the ball rolling. So I'm just gonna go a bit over like the characters, how they're in my fan fiction. Now, some things like I'll probably change for the show, because to make it more sense. Um, because in my story, I realized, after it's published, I realized, oh, like I could have written this better in a different way, but I'm not gonna just keep on changing and updating it. So, but if I was in charge of the show, like I would put some changes. And I also read a lot of other fan fiction, so I'll be inspired by some of those. So, a bit about the characters. So, Will, is married to Matt, which, oh, quick side note, 4 of the girls will be married to the boyfriends that they were with, by the end of the comic. And Tarani didn't end up with anyone after breaking up with Nigel, but I think she'd be a really good fit for Martin. I think, like, I've seen one of the comics, he's apparently dating his French pen pal, Michelle. I don't think it's clearly said if they're dating or she was just visiting. So in my story, I wrote about how they were dating and he broke up, and Tarani just bumped into him, and he's thinking of what to do with his life, and he wanted to be a food critic, so he asked her if she wanted to go with him, because he wanted to go to a new restaurant and see if this is like appealing. And Tarani, who didn't know what she wanted to do either, besides, dancing and teaching dance, she decided, hey, why not? And if this is gonna go well, I'll be a food critic. So that's how it's set up. And again, like, most of them marrying their boyfriends from high school is probably not too realistic, but again, there's magic. Again, if I was put in charge, I'm gonna think of a way how to like explain like the magic force, that's putting them, like making their lives, in a certain direction and making it easier. Which By the way, I also imagine that each of them will have like happy marriages and not too many difficulties because, again, like, yeah, that could happen. Like, it's not like, yeah, divorce isn't such a realistic, but it's not like, in a group of friends, it's not like, there'll always be, someone going through a divorce or whatever. You could have a friend group that they each have happy marriages and so on, and each being successful and everything. So, anyway, back to the characters. So, Will and Matt are married. I didn't think so much about like the jobs for all of them. Will's case we see in a future, in a what if futures, that she wrote a book that was discovered by Martin, who was working for a newspaper, I think, and or he sent it to someone he worked with. So it seems that in that future, like, she'll be a published author. So in this show, like, she would have written it because they didn't have too many Guardian adventures when they were older. So she wrote a book, and which became successful, and it got turned into a TV show with 2 seasons. That's how I'm putting the show in. Our show is our universe is in the universe of the Next Generation show. It's what happened after, Will's book got turned into a show because it was successful. I'm not sure if she wrote a book or a series in the show, but that doesn't really matter. And since, it was about her friends, her and her friends, like, real stories, like, she did make changes. And then, of course, when they were turning it into the show, they also added changes to make it more exciting and whatever. So that's why it's very different in that universe. And then Matt, I would think he has a pretty successful solo career. Some fan fictions have him teaching music at Sheffield, which I think is also like pretty good idea and realistic. He did also tour with Carmilla, so I would, in the show, I think I'd put him, like, again, he was a successful solo act, so he did tour with and open for Carmilla and others. So while they do have a happy marriage, he is away a lot, and so it is a little hard for Will when he's away, but they basically have a happy marriage. Their daughter is Pearl, and she's going to be the water guardian because that's just how, again, I thought of it. And just because their kids are guardians doesn't mean they'll have the same powers, right? It does look like it depends on personality. So the way I imagined it, none of the girls will have their mother's powers. They'll each have a different element. No, wait. Oh no, in my fanfiction, actually, their name's also spelled witch. Pearl, I think, was what I thought before, but in the final version, now I have to think, because I had, because it's a while, let's see. Oh, Coral. Yeah. No, my final version. No, I think her name is Coral. Again, also their names did have like something to do with their elements. So in the show, I did it that way because I thought that was cool. I wanted to do that. In the show, again, like if I was in charge of making it, I would put like in one episode, like maybe the first or second, one of them realizes, hey, our names all have something to do with our element, and their mothers are going to explain, well, we did want to name each of you something as an element, and we just, after you're born, we just had this feeling that, a water name would be good for you, and so on. So her name is Coral. Um, I do picture her as having her mother's hair, but I'm not sure if that would work out genetics wise. Again, like I do want this to be realistic, so obviously if I was making this show, I'm going to like do some research on genetics, and then it depends. And then Irma is married to Steven. Their daughter is Ivy, the Earth Guardian. Now I know there was an episode of, in the comics, there's an issue that Irma, I think she was interviewed in a radio station. So some of fan fictions I read actually have her having her own radio show. I do think, yeah, that's something she would do. Again, just because, they're not going to have everything in their lives based around their elements. I could totally see Irma hosting her own radio show. So I'd imagine, so in this show, she's probably something along those lines, like a journalist or the host of a radio show. Steven, it doesn't say in the comics, like what I went to college for. I think in my fan fiction I had him do something with computers. So that's what. Tarani, their daughter is Ren, and she is the guardian. She's the keeper of the heart. Let's see. Right. Because, that doesn't really have anything to do with electricity, but as a keeper of the heart, she can control all four elements. And in one of the what if futures, we see Halen married. We don't see to whom, and her daughter's name is Tess. And so I figured she'll probably call her daughter Tess, Like, there was a what if future, but like, why not? So Ren is the keeper of the heart, and Tarani and Martin are food critics, the pretty well known. Like again, I want it to be realistic, so if I was again making this show, I won't have like all of them like famous, or very famous at least, but they will be successful, and they're doing all right. So I say they're kind of like local celebrities, some of them, and some of them are more famous. So that's also, Tarani does do dancing on the side. teaching dancing on the side. Actually, I didn't have it in my fan fiction, but I had in my head that I wanted to mention somewhere that because Matt, toured with Carmilla, and he did, when she liked him, he had like an in with her. Like he was able to, so because they were all dancing, he asked her if they could be backup dancers for one time, and that's what they did. Once or twice they danced for Carmilla, and then as they were pursuing other careers, there's only Irma and Tarani who were, sticking with dancing, and sometimes, dancing for Carmilla and other celebrities, right? Because they got noticed and they got very good. Also, back to Will quickly, I'd imagine that she also, again, like a lifeguard or something was swimming. Like before or after writing her book, I imagine like she became a lifeguard, right? Because, she became successful author, so she didn't really think about trying out for the Olympics, but she still loves swimming, so she became a lifeguard, and she works like that sometimes. Okay, now on to Cornelia, who is married to Peter. Now, the Hales are shown to be pretty wealthy, so in my show, Cornelia is more of a stay-at-home mom because she doesn't need a job, really. Though, because she's good at fashion and styling, she works as a personal shopper, and she does like freelance work. What if a issue like we did see she was a park ranger, which I like the idea, but we know like even though she has the element of earth, she doesn't really like getting dirty and being out in nature. But so I picture her as being like a personal shopper, and being ice skating, and actually being in the Olympics for ice skating for a while when she was younger, but after marriage, and settling down, she didn't do that as much, but she became famous because she was an ice skater. Peter, I would imagine, would be again playing basketball and doing pretty good. Can you make money from playing basketball? But yeah, I imagine he's doing something with basketball or surfing, like coaching. Oh yeah, he could be the Sheffield's gym coach or a gym teacher. I think he'd be great at that. And then Helen, who's married to Wesley because after presumably breaking up with Eric, like it wasn't shown in the comics, but at one point they just weren't together, so she met Wesley, and he was only there like once or twice, but since they were going out, that's who she married. Again, if I was making the show, I'm not sure if I'd have her with Wesley or meeting Eric in like college once, and they rekindled their romance. And so they got together, and Wesley, found someone else. So it's like 50-50 if she'd be with Eric or Wesley, and their daughter is Yan Lin, named after her great grandmother, and she's the ear guardian. Pretty coincidental. Also, it's very funny because they're Chinese, and air is not actually part of the Chinese classical elements. Their elements are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. So I just think like that would be hilarious to have a third generation Lin be their ear guardian. In the show, it was also, Lupa mentioned something, a continuity of spirit, which is why Helen was chosen. If I was making this show, I'd try to have like something with that. Okay, a bit about the girls. I just pictured. Oh, right. I forgot. Cornelia's daughter is Helen. I forgot to mention that. Now, it didn't come in my fan fiction yet, but when I was, writing it, Helen just struck me as being on the autism spectrum, high functioning. I don't know if I would put that in the show if I was, again, magically in charge, but she just struck me as that. The other girls, I didn't really think of anything. Like I know diversity is good when it comes to like body types and stuff, but like real life, you don't always have diversity, right? You could have a friend group that they're all white and skinny and whatever. So in my show, I think so far that she's like really like the only other diversity. And then of course they'll have Yang Lin is half Chinese, and Helen and oh wait, no. Oh right. No, Helen's daughter is Tess. I just thought of before I had the final version. I really wanted her to be Yang Lin, but her name is Tess because of the what if future. So their names spell out witch. So for diversity, Helen is high functioning, has autism, but high functioning. So again, so it is a little harder for her to be a guardian sometimes, right? When there's just like a lot of noise and chaos because they're fighting bad guys and all that. But she like has her friends to help her, and then Tess is half Chinese, and Ren is gonna be like biracial, right? Because of Tarani, right? Because Tarani, though in the comics she was adopted, right? So adopted, so looks she's black. In my fan fiction, I had her parents be Haitian, just because. So also, yeah, in the show, I definitely would want to have something about finding her real parents. But anyway, she's black. If I was in charge of the show, maybe I'd make her be Haitian because that's what her parents were. But again, that's what her parents are like in my fan fiction. But so her daughter will be like biracial, at least. And then Helen will also be biracial because her father's Peter. And then, of course, Will is, it looks like biracial because Susan A commenter said on one of my videos that one of the authors said that Susan is Italian. So Coral, is gonna have some Italian in her. And that's I think that's enough diversity, right? Just like with the Witch Girls, right? I mean, they're a pretty diverse cast of characters, like with ethnicity, and that's fine. You don't have to have one disabled, one at least one black, and this and that, whatever. Okay? And I'm thinking, again, if I was making the show, I would make the girls 1 or 2 years older than their parents because, again, they're fighting bad guys, And it's just ridiculous that kids are chosen. So, to me, if they were at least a little bit older, like 15, 16, 17, it would make a little more sense. And, of course, I would have their clothes be modest all the time. Funnily enough, that wasn't the case in the show and the comics, even though it's owned by Disney. But if I was in charge of the show, that meant they'll be modest, meaning whenever they wear crop tops, they'll be layered over something. And their clothes, and when I say modest, I mean according to the average American public school dress code. Because that's, pretty good, baseline. Okay, I think that's all. And now for just some ideas I have. I didn't think of the whole season or more and everything. Again, this is just more like concepts. And if a lot of you guys like it, we could try, I guess making it more put together and see if we could present it to anybody. I mean, we're fans, so I don't think we'll really be able to, but you can at least try, working on it, making it better just in case. So the girls are told, so the girls grew up knowing about magic and about all the magical kids who are now adults, some married, with their own families, or starting their own families. But they were told that from a young age that it's still a secret in the rest of the world. So you can't talk about it in school, but when you're with everyone, right, with your family, not everyone, because they excuse me, they all the girls, they didn't tell all the grandparents and cousins, whatever. But when they're around certain family members and the friends, you could be magical, but in school, and you can't talk about it. So they get told that they're guardians, and somewhat on purpose. They get told again in the Lynn's restaurant when they're eating together because, Halen thought, why not? I forgot to mention in the show that Halen, she has her own clothing line. She's a fashion designer. She's pretty successful. So her friends and, relatives do model, and because they kind of have an in with Carmilla, she wears some of her designs, but it's more on the side now because she and her husband, whether it's Wesley or Eric, inherited the restaurant. And if she marries Wesley, we know that he's a musician, so he's doing something with that. Eric, I guess, would be an astronomer because that's what he likes. One of the issues we see them move because the Silver Dragon became so successful that they moved and had like the stairs of the restaurant, I think, turned into a pizza place. So in this show, I would have like her like move back to the Silver Dragon with her family, because all the girls like are still living around there because it's just easier for guardian stuff. So now all of them also noticed that their kids displayed some kind of magic. So again, they all thought that the girls will be guardians, so they stayed together. I'm not sure if their siblings would also be magic. I think it's realistic because surely if they were guardians when they gave birth, even if they weren't transformed, surely some of that magic would pass on to their kids, right? So the girls are told that they're guardians, and they don't really have evil to fight. It's just, it's time, right? Because their parents are getting older. So the girls are guardians now. So they're like all excited, and they realize that, hey, our group name is also Witch, like our mothers. And its life is as usual, but then they get summoned to Kandrakar, where Yanlin is still the oracle, and she says, "Girls, I have something to tell you." And then she explains a bit about the astral traps. She summons the girls and their parents. It's about the astral traps. So because the girls, didn't know, she explains briefly about the astral traps, how they became their own people and were sent to this planet. And she says, okay, before I go on quickly, like, we're not really told how the astral traps work, so this is my interpretation. It didn't come up in the fan fiction because I didn't think of it then, but this is my interpretation of how that worked that I thought of now. So she says that the astral traps are dying because the way astral traps work is that it's like yourself, basically, like you're copying yourself, so you are using like your life force, basically, and it doesn't matter because they get absorbed back, but because the astral drops became like their own people, now the life force is running out, so they are essentially going to die. And she just thought the girls should know, because again, like, what really are they supposed to do? So they're going to try to figure this out, because again, technically the astral drops are alive and their own people, but so they're trying to figure out. Also, they each have families, but because they were made with certain amount of life force, their kids are also dying because it's running out. I'm not exactly sure how I would explain like life force in this, but in the show, I imagine it's something like it is blood that you can replenish it, but it all depends like how much and how. Life force, doesn't necessarily mean like years of your life. So if someone like Phobos, for example, drained your life force, like, it doesn't mean like he's taking away years of your life, but if he takes too much, he could prematurely age you. Like, it all depends. So that is like, news. Big news. They're trying to figure that out. And then she drops another big bomb or two, and she briefly tells him about Meridian and how Elion's son Zayden is around their age, and it's a little hard for him because he does look like his uncle Phobos. And so then she explains about the Phobos thing, and she also mentions that a while ago, after Phobos, threw himself into the void, he somehow survived, so he was still floating there when she became Oracle, and she realized that this is absurd, leaving him floating forever in this void without food, water, or anything. It was just like tangent. I just found that so odd in the comics. Like, surely they wouldn't do that. Like, that's just cruel and unusual punishment, right? But he didn't come back in the comics, so presumably they left him floating. And Irma somehow, I guess, knew how it works because she was mentioning that, oh, he's going to be like falling in there forever. So in the show, he's falling there again for a few years. I say like about 3-ish years from that time until Yanlin becomes Oracle. So he's alive, but the way the void works is like he doesn't need to eat or anything, and he doesn't feel hunger. And he's kind of, after a certain amount of time, you're like kind of like in a trance, like kind of like stasis, is it? Like, you're just like frozen in time, kind of like you're not really like thinking and whatever. And now that she's Oracle and she could do something about it, she rescued him, and made a deal with him that basically, like, you don't deserve that. And but she's gonna give him a chance, but obviously, right, there's gonna be a lot of like regulations, and like she like told him, like, she knows like he's probably gonna try to become the Oracle again or something, and she made it like that he can't do anything like that. And he's a smart guy, so again, he's not going to try, but he's still focused. So in the back of his mind, he's like thinking, oh, if I have the opportunity to rule Meridian again or something, I'll take it. But Bayan Lin made it like basically impossible. So in my fan fiction, he became king of a planet because they asked Yan Lin to help choose a king, and she thought, why not? I mean, they're all shapeshifters on this planet, so I think Phobos, will be able to handle it. And, it'll be like a trial. If he could be an ally, sort of, to Kendrakar and rule decently, she'll allow him some privileges and, ease up on him. I'm not sure if I was magically in charge of this show, I'm not sure if I'll have that or something else, but basically Phobos was alive this whole time and behind the council's back because they're all a bunch of idiots in the comics for some reason, even though they're supposed to be the wisest and I mean, Younglin does not want to deal with all that drama. So this was a secret. She did tell Elion, but she made her keep it a secret. And by now, again, about 20 years later, I'm not sure exactly how long it would be, but it's around that time, they're kind of getting along more. Like, he did, like, visit a few times. They, had some nice chats. Elion's married to Caleb, by the way. And so, and she's just like tired of keeping it a secret. So she's just telling them. Again, like this, I don't know for sure what it would be. And again, this is like a rough idea of the season, of like some concepts. So she's telling him. Again, if I was put in charge, I would develop that more. And she thinks she's been oracle enough. She wants to like move on to, I guess, heaven, wherever. She also has been making some changes ever since she is oracle to make it run much better. And she wants to. So now she thinks like, oh, they could. After choosing a new oracle, she'll like go to heaven or whatever. And she mentioned that Himarish, right? The previous oracle, he apparently went somewhere after not being oracle, we're not said, and she, found him and is trying to persuade him to become oracle because she thinks now he'll be wiser, and she has some other ideas. Meanwhile, also, again, Zayden isn't doing so well, so she wants him to like have a break and live on Earth with them for a while and be like a normal kid. Now I do want like some people from the comics to like come back, and we'll see how that went. Like Orub, is that how you pronounce it? It's either like Orub or Rube. Like, I'm not sure. So definitely I want her back, and the Runics. I definitely would want something, again, like the Runics we discovered are like working for an evil Kanshakar. I would definitely have them back in the first season in a much bigger role. I also, again, in my fanfiction, I had that they just told the detectives because all these magical people are popping up on Earth, so, and they don't want them to go after them, so they have like an arrangement. Oh, also the Heart of Earth. So I'm changing a bit from my fanfiction. In the show, it would be that there was a Heart of Earth, but she was killed a long time ago. And so there wasn't a Heart of Earth because no one like reclaimed it. Again, like I didn't really think of all the details. And so that's why there's all the magical people, but a Heart of Earth was found. In my fanfiction, the Heart of Earth was Meg from the Witch on Stage special, and so they told her, and she and the others became friends because they were in the musical, so she split her powers with them, so they became guardians of Earth. So I'll definitely do something like that in the show. because I do really like that, but we do see William Collins has magic, so I'm thinking if I was in charge of this show, maybe I'll make him be the Heart of Earth, because that does explain his powers. So they look more like Heart of Kendrickar powers, but you know. In my fanfiction, I did have Narissa end up being Susan's mother, and it just so she got some of the magic, but again, like I'm not sure how like that would work exactly. This is also why I would want like the original authors of the comics. Even if I was put in charge, I still want to make everything make sense. So I want to know what they thought of all this. Like guardian magic really isn't hereditary, but I would think that you might be able to inherit a little bit. So again, that's just some concepts. I don't really have much else, but I would also definitely want the nymphs and that kind of stuff to be in a larger role. I'm not sure yet. I want to see like some people like Arcanta. I want to see like people and places we know already from the comics, but new ones, and new ones also. So I think that's basically done. Again, like I didn't really. These are only just like concepts, right? It didn't really write like a basic season, but I love to know what you think and if you think there's any way we could like work on this as fans or something and ask Disney to make it a show. Okay, I don't know when my next upload will be, but thank you all for watching and I'll see you later.